The conference room fell silent as I walked in, my Louboutins clicking against the marble floor. Marcus's face went white. His hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the table, knuckles turning the color of bone. I watched his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard, his eyes darting between me and the man beside me. My husband, Christopher Thornton, CEO of Thornton Industries. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice steady and professional. "For those who don't know me, I'm Elena Thornton, your new Chief Operating Officer. I look forward to working with all of you." Marcus looked like he might vomit. 3 months ago, he'd left me standing alone in that restaurant, our engagement ring abandoned on the white tablecloth next to a half-eaten tiramisu. 3 months ago, he'd chosen his career over me, breaking my heart into pieces so small I wasn't sure I'd ever collect them all. He'd traded our 5-year relationship for a promotion dangled by Amanda Chen, the previous COO, a woman who'd made it clear she wanted Marcus for more than just his marketing expertise. Now I was his boss, and the satisfying irony wasn't lost on either of us. But let me back up. Let me tell you how a broken engagement led me here, to this moment of perfect poetic justice. 6 months ago, my life looked completely different. I was Elena Rodriguez, senior marketing analyst at a mid-sized firm called Brightwell Solutions. I was good at my job, great even, but I wasn't ambitious in the cutthroat way that corporate America rewards. I loved my work, loved building campaigns that actually connected with people, but I also loved going home at 6, cooking dinner with Marcus, planning our wedding, and dreaming about the family we'd build together. Marcus Hayes had been my world for 5 years. We'd met in college, both marketing majors with big dreams and empty wallets. He was charming, funny, and shared my passion for the field. We'd supported each other through internships, entry-level positions, and the slow climb up the corporate ladder. When he proposed on the beach in Malibu 2 years ago, I'd cried so hard I could barely say yes. Our relationship wasn't perfect. Whose is? But I thought we were solid. I thought we were endgame. We'd weathered his mother's disapproval of me. I wasn't ambitious enough for her precious son. My father's lengthy illness and death, and the stress of planning a wedding while both climbing in our respective careers. The cracks started showing about 8 months before everything fell apart. Marcus got recruited to Thornton Industries, one of the biggest players in tech and consumer products. It was a massive step up from his previous company, with a salary that made my eyes water and benefits that seemed almost too good to be true. He'd be working directly under Amanda Chen, the COO, who had a reputation for being brilliant, ruthless, and utterly committed to excellence. I was thrilled for him. Genuinely, completely thrilled. We celebrated with champagne we couldn't quite afford and made love like newlyweds, already imagining the bigger apartment we could afford, the honeymoon upgrade we could finally book. But things changed quickly. Marcus started working late, really late. Midnight, 1 a.m., sometimes not coming home until dawn. "Amanda pushes hard," he'd explain, looking exhausted. "But I'm learning so much, Elena. This is the opportunity of a lifetime." I believed him. I packed him lunches, kept dinner warm for hours, and fell asleep alone more nights than not. When I suggested he push back on some of the late nights, he'd get defensive. "You don't understand the level we're playing at now," he'd say. "This isn't some small-time marketing firm. This is the big leagues." The distance grew. Our wedding planning fell entirely to me. Marcus missed appointments with the caterer, the florist, and the venue coordinator. He forgot my birthday and tried to make up for it with an expensive necklace that felt more like guilt than love. When I tried to talk to him about feeling neglected, he'd accuse me of not supporting his career, of being jealous of his success. "You could be more ambitious too," he said during one particularly brutal fight. "Maybe if you pushed yourself harder, you'd understand what I'm dealing with." That hurt. That really hurt. Because I was ambitious. Just not in the way that required sacrificing everything else on the altar of career advancement. I wanted success, but I also wanted a life. I wanted a partner, not a roommate I occasionally glimpsed between business trips. The worst part was watching him change. The Marcus I'd fallen in love with had been kind, considerate, and genuinely excited about building a life together. This new Marcus was harder, colder, more calculating. He started critiquing everything. My clothes weren't professional enough. My career trajectory wasn't impressive enough. My friends weren't useful enough for networking. I should have seen it coming. All the signs were there, written in neon lights. But love makes you stupid, and hope makes you blind. The end came on a Tuesday evening in late April. Marcus had actually agreed to have dinner with me, a real sit-down dinner at Marcello's, our favorite Italian place. I'd bought a new dress, gotten my hair done, and dared to hope that maybe we were turning a corner, that maybe my fiancé was coming back to me. He was late, of course. 45 minutes late, which I spent nursing a glass of wine and ignoring the pitying looks from the waitstaff. When he finally arrived, he looked distracted, checking his phone every few seconds. "Sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "Amanda needed me to review some projections." "It's fine," I lied, "but I'm just glad we're finally doing this." We ordered. I got the lobster ravioli I loved. He got the osso buco, and for a few minutes it almost felt normal. We talked about surface things, the weather, a movie I'd seen, his mother's upcoming visit. Nothing deep, nothing real, but it was something. Then his phone buzzed, and buzzed again and again. "I'm sorry," he said, looking at the screen. "I need to take this. It's Amanda." He stepped outside, and I watched through the window as he paced back and forth, animated in a way he never was with me anymore. He was smiling, laughing, completely absorbed. When he came back 15 minutes later, his whole demeanor had changed. He looked nervous, guilty, determined. "Elena," he said, sitting down, "we need to talk." Those 4 words, the death knell of any relationship. "Okay," I said slowly, my heart already sinking. He took a deep breath. "I've been offered a promotion. VP of Global Marketing. It's everything I've been working toward." "That's wonderful," I said, meaning it despite the dread pooling in my stomach. "Congratulations." "There's a condition," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "Amanda made it clear that the position requires complete dedication. No distractions, no divided attention. She said that people at this level can't afford to be pulled in multiple directions." "What are you saying?" He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes broke something fundamental inside me. Pity, calculation, relief at ending something that had become inconvenient. "I'm saying I can't marry you, Elena. I need to focus on my career right now. This opportunity is too important to risk." The restaurant blurred around me. I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. We'd been together 5 years. We'd planned a whole life together. We'd chosen napkin colors and debated guest lists and argued about whether to have a DJ or a band. "You're breaking up with me for a job?" I whispered. "It's not just a job, it's my future. Our wedding is in 3 months, and I can't be what you need right now. You want someone who comes home for dinner and helps you pick out curtains. I need to be someone who's willing to sacrifice everything for success." Amanda helped me see that. Amanda. Of course it came back to Amanda. I thought about all those late nights, all those hushed phone calls, all the times he'd come home smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine. "Are you sleeping with her?" I asked, my voice hollow. "What? No, God, Elena, this isn't about Amanda. This is about me finally having the courage to admit what I need. You're wonderful, but you're holding me back. I need someone who understands this world, who can be an asset to my career, not a burden." Each word was a knife. A burden. That's what I'd become to him. The woman who'd supported him through everything, who'd believed in him when no one else did, who'd loved him unconditionally. I was a burden. He pulled off his engagement ring, the one I'd saved for months to buy, and placed it on the table next to the dessert menu. "I'm sorry," he said, standing up. "I really am, but this is the right thing for both of us. You'll see that eventually." And then he left. Just walked out of the restaurant, out of my life. Like our 5 years together meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. I sat there for a long time, staring at that ring, unable to process what had just happened. The waiter eventually came over, his face full of sympathy, and quietly boxed up my untouched ravioli. I paid the bill with shaking hands and walked out into the warm spring night feeling completely, utterly destroyed. The next few weeks were the darkest of my life. darker than when my father died because at least that loss had been beyond anyone's control. This was a choice. Marcus had chosen his career over me, had decided I wasn't worth the inconvenience of maintaining a relationship. I called off the wedding. That was its own special nightmare, canceling the venue, returning deposits, informing guests, dealing with my mother's tears and my brother's rage. "I'll kill him," Tony had growled when I told him. "I'll destroy that ambitious little prick." "Don't," I'd said tiredly. He's not worth it." But the worst part was going to work every day and pretending I was fine. My colleagues at Brightwell knew about the breakup. Gossip travels fast in a small company, and their pitying looks and careful avoidance of any mention of Marcus made me want to scream. I threw myself into my work, staying late, volunteering for extra projects, anything to avoid going home to the apartment that still smelled like his cologne. I'd also begun to hear things through the industry grapevine. Marcus and Amanda weren't exactly subtle about their new relationship. They'd been seen together at industry events, business dinners that lasted until midnight, weekend strategy sessions at her beach house. The promotion he'd thrown me away for came through, of course. He was now VP of Global Marketing at Thornton Industries, Amanda's protege, and, from what people whispered, probably her lover. It should have destroyed me. Instead, something else happened. Something cold and hard crystallized in my chest where my heart used to be. I'd spent 5 years supporting Marcus, believing in him, making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I'd muted my own ambitions, downplayed my own talents, and convinced myself that being a good partner meant being content with being second best. No more. I started putting together my portfolio, documenting every campaign I'd led, every success I'd engineered, every innovative strategy I'd developed. I'd been good at my job while coasting, playing it safe, leaving at 6. What could I do if I actually tried? If I channeled all the energy I'd wasted on Marcus into my own career? I updated my LinkedIn, reached out to old professors and colleagues, and started applying for positions that scared me with their scope and responsibility. If Marcus could reinvent himself into a corporate shark, so could I. Better even. 3 weeks after the breakup, I got a call from a recruiter, Mrs. Rodriguez, I have a client who's very interested in your background. Would you be available for a preliminary interview? Of course, I said, trying not to sound too eager. Excellent. The position is Director of Strategic Marketing at Thornton Industries. I almost laughed. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. Thornton Industries? I'm familiar with the company. Wonderful. I should mention this is a newly created position reporting directly to the CEO, Christopher Thornton. He's restructuring the leadership team and wants someone with fresh perspectives. Your work on the Catalyst campaign caught his attention. The Catalyst campaign had been my baby, my masterpiece. I'd convinced Brightwell to take a risk on an experiential marketing strategy that had gone viral, doubling their revenue in 1 quarter. It was the kind of success that should have earned me a promotion, but I'd been too focused on my upcoming wedding to push for one. When would he like to meet? I asked. Tomorrow at 2, if you're available. I was very available. Christopher Thornton's office occupied the entire top floor of the Thornton Industries building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel in downtown Los Angeles. I dressed in my best suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, paired with the pearl earrings my father had given me for my college graduation. I looked professional, confident, and completely unlike the heartbroken mess I'd been just 3 weeks ago. The elevator ride to the 50th floor felt like ascending to Olympus. I'd researched Christopher Thornton extensively the night before. At 42, he'd built Thornton Industries from a small tech startup into a multi-billion-dollar empire spanning technology, consumer products, and digital media. He was known for being brilliant, demanding, and intensely private. There were no scandal-filled tabloid stories, no messy divorces, no Instagram thirst traps. He let his work speak for itself. His assistant, a polished woman named Margaret, greeted me warmly and led me into the inner sanctum. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the entire city sprawling beneath us. The office was minimalist, clean lines, expensive furniture, no clutter or personal photos. Everything about it screamed power and precision. Christopher Thornton stood as I entered, and I was struck by how different he was from the corporate sharks I'd imagined. He was tall with silver threading through his dark hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. But there was warmth there too, and intelligence, and something that looked like genuine curiosity. "Miss Rodriguez," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Thornton." "Please call me Christopher. Have a seat." We sat across from each other, and he studied me for a moment before speaking. "I've been following your career with interest. The Catalyst campaign was exceptional, not just creative, but grounded in real consumer psychology. You made people feel something, and that's rare." "Thank you. I believe the best marketing doesn't feel like marketing at all. It feels like a conversation, a relationship." "Exactly." He leaned forward slightly. "I'll be direct, Ms. Rodriguez. Thornton Industries has become too insular, too focused on safe strategies that produce predictable results. I want to disrupt our own playbook before someone else disrupts us. I need someone who can think differently, who isn't afraid to take calculated risks." We talked for 2 hours. He asked probing questions about my approach to brand building, my thoughts on emerging markets, my vision for authentic consumer engagement in an age of digital saturation. I forgot to be nervous. This was what I loved: the strategic chess game of marketing, the art of understanding human desire and channeling it into action. Finally, he sat back and smiled. "I'm going to be very unprofessional and admit that I'd like to offer you the position right now without making you go through several more rounds of interviews." My heart leapt. "I'm listening." "Director of Strategic Marketing, reporting directly to me. You'll have a team of 15, a budget that will make you dizzy, and the freedom to completely reimagine how we approach our consumer base. Salary is $350,000 plus bonuses and stock options. I want someone who's hungry, Elena, someone with something to prove." $350,000. That was more than double my current salary. That was fuck you money. That was I don't need anyone money. "I have one question," I said carefully. "I understand Amanda Chen is your COO. How would this position interact with her department?" Something flickered across his face. "Amanda oversees operations, but marketing strategy falls under my direct purview, which is why this position reports to me rather than through her. There would be some collaboration naturally, but you'd have significant autonomy." Translation: Amanda had her territory, and this would be mine. I could work with that. "Then I accept," I said. "When would you like me to start?" "Yesterday?" He grinned. "But I'll settle for 2 weeks from now. That gives you time to give notice." We shook hands, and I left his office feeling like I'd just won the lottery. It wasn't until I was in the elevator that the full implications hit me. I'd be working at the same company as Marcus. I'd probably see him in the halls and meetings, at company events. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I smiled, let him see what he'd thrown away. Let him watch me succeed in the same world he'd claimed I wasn't ambitious enough for. My first day at Thornton Industries was carefully orchestrated chaos. Margaret gave me a tour of the building, introducing me to what felt like hundreds of people whose names I'd never remember. The marketing department occupied the entire 32nd floor, a sprawling space of open workstations and glass-walled conference rooms. I saw Marcus once, briefly, in the cafeteria. He was with Amanda, both of them laughing over something on his phone. She was beautiful in that polished, expensive way. Perfect highlights, designer clothes, the kind of confidence that came from never doubting your place in the world. When Marcus looked up and saw me, his face went through a remarkable transformation. Shock, guilt, confusion, and then something that looked almost like fear. I gave him a cool nod and kept walking, my head high. I had better things to do than worry about my ex-fiancé. My team was talented but beaten down by years of playing it safe. In our first meeting, I laid out my vision for transforming our approach from traditional advertising to immersive brand experiences. I saw skepticism on some faces, but also excitement, hunger for something more creative. "I know change is scary, Sakis," I said. "But I didn't come here to do what's always been done. I came here to do what's never been tried. If that doesn't interest you, I respect that. But I need people who are willing to take risks." No one left. Instead, they started asking questions, sharing ideas, coming alive in a way I suspected they hadn't in years. By the end of that first week, we'd scrapped 3 existing campaigns and started building something entirely new, a multi-platform experience that would turn our flagship product launch into an interactive story. Christopher checked in regularly, always supportive, always pushing me to think bigger. We developed an easy rapport, built on mutual respect and shared vision. He was demanding but never demeaning, expecting excellence but also providing the resources and trust needed to achieve it. I was working 12-hour days, but unlike with Marcus, I loved every minute of it. This was my vision, my strategy, my success. I wasn't supporting someone else's dream anymore. I was building my own. One evening, about 6 weeks into my new role, Christopher stopped by my office around 8. "You're still here," he observed. "Big presentation tomorrow," I explained, gesturing at the mock-ups covering my desk. "Want to make sure we nail it." He studied the designs, nodding appreciatively. "This is excellent work, Elena, really exceptional." "Thank you. I have a great team." "You have a great leader." He paused, then asked, "Have you eaten?" "I had a protein bar around 3. "That's not a meal. Come on, I'm buying you dinner. You can't present tomorrow if you collapse from malnutrition." I started to protest, but he was already putting on his jacket. "That's not a request, Director Rodriguez. That's an order from your boss." We went to a small Japanese place a few blocks from the office, tucked away from the business district bustle. Christopher clearly knew the owner, who greeted him warmly and led us to a quiet table in the back. Over sake and sushi, we talked about everything except work. I learned he'd grown up in Texas, the son of an oil worker and a school teacher, and had put himself through MIT on scholarships and stubbornness. He'd built Thornton Industries from nothing, risking everything multiple times, driven by a vision of what technology could be when it served people rather than just profits. "What about you, hey?" "News," he asked. "The recruiter's report mentioned you recently called off a wedding. If that's too personal, you don't have to answer." I considered deflecting, but something about the way he asked, genuinely curious, not prurient, made me honest. My fiancé decided his career was more important than our relationship. He got a promotion and decided I was a distraction. "Then he's an idiot," Christopher said bluntly. "Sorry, that's probably not professional to say." "No, please, feel free to continue." He smiled. "Anyone who'd let you go for something as meaningless as a corporate title has fundamentally misunderstood what matters in life. I've built a billion-dollar company, Elena, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that none of it means anything without people to share it with." Says the man who's famously married to his work, I teased gently. "Touché." He refilled my sake cup. "I was married once, actually, long time ago before the company really took off. She wanted the life I couldn't give her, stability, predictability, a husband who came home for dinner. I wanted to build something that mattered. We parted ways amicably, but I learned something important. You can't ask someone to be less than they are, and you shouldn't let anyone make you feel like your dreams are negotiable." We talked until the restaurant closed, and when we finally left, I felt lighter than I had in months. Christopher wasn't just my boss, he was becoming a friend. The presentation the next day was a triumph. The board approved our entire strategy and increased our budget by 40%. My team was ecstatic, and even Amanda grudgingly acknowledged it was impressive work. I was riding high. My career was taking off, I was respected, I was making more money than I'd ever dreamed of, and I was finally proving to myself that I'd never needed Marcus. I'd only needed the chance to show what I could really do. The annual Thornton Industries Gala was the social event of the corporate season, a black tie affair at the Beverly Hills Hotel where everyone who was anyone in our industry came to see and be seen. I'd bought a dress for the occasion, a midnight blue gown that hugged my curves and made me feel like a different person entirely. The heartbroken girl who'd been dumped over tiramisu was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth. Christopher was my date, in a purely professional capacity. He'd explained that as a department head reporting directly to him, I was expected to attend, and it would be easier to navigate the social dynamics if we arrived together. I'd agreed secretly, thrilled at the prospect of walking into that ballroom on his arm. The hotel was transformed into a wonderland of flowers, twinkling lights, and elegant simplicity. A string quartet played as guests arrived, everyone dressed in their finest, already networking and positioning. I saw Amanda holding court near the bar, Marcus at her side like an obedient puppy. She wore red, of course she wore red, and diamonds that probably cost more than my car. Christopher offered me his arm, and we made our entrance. I felt heads turn, heard the whispers. Who was she? The new director? Was she with Christopher Thornton? I kept my face serene, my smile confident, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. You look stunning, Christopher murmured as we accepted champagne from a passing waiter. Half the room is wondering who you are, and the other half is wondering how they can get you to come work for them. Good thing I have a contract, I replied. We circulated, and Christopher introduced me to board members, investors, and industry leaders. I was charming and professional, discussing strategy and vision, making connections that would serve me well. Several people mentioned they'd heard about our recent campaign launch, that the industry buzz was exceptional. Then Marcus approached, Amanda on his arm. I'd known this moment was inevitable, but I still had to steel myself. Christopher, Amanda said smoothly. Wonderful event, as always. Amanda, Marcus. Christopher's tone was polite but cool. I realized then that he didn't particularly like either of them, though I wasn't sure why. I don't believe we've been formally introduced, Amanda said, looking at me with razor-sharp assessment. I'm Amanda Chen, COO. Elena Rodriguez, Director of Strategic Marketing. I shook her hand firmly, matching her grip. Ah, yes. The Catalyst campaign girl. Christopher has been singing your praises. She made it sound like a diminishment, like I was a one-hit wonder. Elena has been instrumental in transforming our entire marketing approach, Christopher said, his voice carrying an edge I'd never heard before. The board was extremely impressed with her vision. Marcus had been silent, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke. Elena, I didn't realize you'd be here. Why wouldn't I be? I work here. My voice was pleasant, utterly professional. Yes, of course, It's good to see you. Is it? I tilted my head, genuinely curious. Because you look like you've seen a ghost. Amanda's eyes sharpened with interest. Do you two know each other? We used to, I said before Marcus could respond. Ancient history. Now, if you'll excuse us, I see someone Christopher wanted me to meet. We glided away, leaving them standing there. I could feel Marcus's eyes on my back, but I didn't look back. Why would I? I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I'm sorry, Christopher said quietly as we reached the other side of the room. I should have warned you they'd be here. It's fine, really. And it was. Seeing Marcus had hurt less than I'd expected. He looked smaller somehow, less impressive next to Christopher's quiet confidence and genuine strength. The evening continued, a whirl of conversation and networking. Christopher stayed by my side the entire time, which people definitely noticed. Toward the end of the night, as the crowd thinned and the quartet shifted to slower songs, he turned to me. Dance with me? Is that a professional requirement? I teased. Purely selfish desire. We moved onto the dance floor, and he placed one hand on my waist, taking my other hand in his. We swayed to the music, and I was acutely aware of how well we fit together, how natural this felt. Thank you, I said softly. For what? For giving me a chance. For believing in me when I wasn't sure I believed in myself. Elena, you didn't need me to believe in you. You just needed the opportunity to show everyone else what you already were. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something shifted in the air between us. It wasn't the frantic, desperate chemistry I'd had with Marcus. This was something deeper, more substantial, recognition between equals, respect that could become something more. Christopher, I started, not sure what I wanted to say. I know this is complicated, he said. You work for me, and that creates all sorts of professional considerations. But I also know that I haven't felt this way about anyone in a very long time, and I'm too old to pretend otherwise. My breath caught. Felt what way? Like maybe I'm not actually married to my work anymore. Like maybe there's someone worth coming home to. Before I could respond, Marcus appeared at Christopher's shoulder. May I cut in? The audacity, the sheer, unbelievable audacity. Christopher looked at me, letting it be my choice. I could have said no, should have said no. But I wanted to face this head on, wanted to show Marcus and myself that he had no power over me anymore. Of course, I said. Christopher stepped back, though he didn't go far, and Marcus took his place. His hands on me felt wrong, foreign, like a stranger's touch. You look incredible, Marcus said. I've never seen you like this. Like what? Successful, happy, not convenient? He flinched. I deserve that. Elena, I've been wanting to talk to you, to explain. There's nothing to explain, Marcus. You made your choice very clear. You wanted a promotion more than you wanted me. You got the promotion. Congratulations. It wasn't like that. Amanda made it seem like I had to choose, and you did choose. That's the point. You chose. I kept my voice low, unwilling to make a scene. You threw away 5 years for a corporate title and a woman who's using you the same way you used me. That's not fair, isn't it? Come on, Marcus. We both know Amanda doesn't love you. She loves your utility, your obedience, your willingness to be her perfect protege. What happens when the next shiny young thing catches her eye? When you're not useful anymore? He looked stricken, and I realized I'd hit closer to the truth than I'd meant to. Maybe he'd already started seeing the cracks, already realized that trading genuine love for corporate advancement had been a devil's bargain. Do you love him? Marcus asked abruptly. Christopher? I could have lied. Should have lied, maybe. But I found myself being honest. I don't know yet, but I know he sees me as a whole person, not a burden or an asset. He challenges me to be better without making me feel less. That's more than you ever did. The song ended. I stepped back, putting distance between us. Be happy, Marcus. I mean that. But be happy somewhere away from me. I walked back to Christopher, who was waiting exactly where I'd left him. He offered me his arm, and we left the ballroom together, leaving Marcus standing alone on the dance floor. The next few months were transformative. My campaign launched to massive success, generating the kind of viral buzz that money couldn't buy. We'd created an immersive experience that turned product consumers into brand advocates, and the revenue numbers reflected it. Christopher was thrilled, the board was impressed, and my team was riding high on their victory. Christopher and I spent more and more time together, ostensibly working, but often just talking, sharing meals, discovering that we had more in common than just professional respect. He was brilliant and driven, yes, but also kind, funny, and surprisingly humble for someone who'd built an empire. He remembered small things, how I took my coffee, that I was allergic to shellfish, that I loved old black and white movies. We still hadn't crossed any lines. He was my boss, and we were both aware of the optics, the potential complications. But the tension between us was palpable, an electric current that hummed whenever we were in the same room. Then Amanda made her move. I heard about it through my assistant, Sarah, who had her finger on the pulse of company gossip. Amanda had gone to the board with concerns about Christopher's judgment, specifically regarding his inappropriate relationship with me. She claimed he was showing favoritism, that my success was due to his personal interest rather than my abilities, that it created a hostile work environment. It was brilliant and vicious. Even though nothing had happened between Christopher and me, she'd weaponized the appearance of impropriety. She wanted my position gone, wanted me discredited, and she was using the very thing that made me uncomfortable, the power dynamic, against both of us. The board called an emergency meeting. Christopher was furious, but also worried, not for himself, but for me. They could force me to fire you, he said, pacing his office. or force you to transfer to a different department under someone else's supervision. Amanda's playing dirty. Let her, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. I have documentation of everything I've accomplished, every campaign decision, every success metric, every team evaluation. My work speaks for itself. You shouldn't have to defend yourself against baseless accusations. No, but I will anyway. That's what we do, right? We fight. The board meeting was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, I worked harder than ever, building an ironclad case for my value to the company. I gathered testimonials from my team, data on revenue increases, industry recognition, everything that proved I'd earned my position through merit, not favoritism. I also did something else, something that felt risky but necessary. I reached out to people in Amanda's department, people who'd worked with her closely over the years, and I started hearing stories. Stories about manipulation, about taking credit for others' work, about creating toxic environments where people were afraid to speak up. Amanda Chen was brilliant, but she was also ruthless in ways that crossed ethical lines. One person in particular was willing to talk, James Chen, Amanda's ex-husband. They'd been married during her rise through the ranks, and he'd watched her transformation from ambitious professional to something darker. She always needed to be the smartest person in the room, he told me over coffee, and anyone who threatened that position became a target. I saw her destroy people's careers for the crime of being too talented. Is that what's happening to you? She's claiming I only got my position because Christopher and I are involved. James snorted. Of course she is. That's her favorite play. She did the same thing to the woman who had your position before you, started rumors, questioned her judgment, made her life so miserable she quit. Amanda can't stand the idea of another talented woman getting recognition that doesn't flow through her. Why didn't anyone stop her? Because she's very good at covering her tracks. And because she delivers results. The board loves results. He gave me something invaluable. Documentation of complaints that had been filed against Amanda over the years, complaints that had mysteriously disappeared or been dismissed, harassment allegations, evidence of her taking credit for her team's work, proof of the toxic environment she created. Why are you giving me this? I asked. Because someone needs to stop her, he said simply, and because I think you might actually be able to do it. The board meeting was held in the executive conference room on the 50th floor. Christopher, Amanda, Marcus, as her VP, myself, and 7 board members, 5 men, 2 women, sat around a massive table made of dark wood that had probably cost more than my annual salary. Amanda presented first, her case against Christopher's leadership. She was polished, professional, devastatingly effective. She painted a picture of a CEO who'd let his personal feelings compromise his judgment, who'd elevated an inexperienced director to a position she wasn't qualified for, who'd created an environment where merit mattered less than personal relationships. Ms. Rodriguez is talented, certainly, Amanda said, her voice dripping with false generosity. But Director of Strategic Marketing reporting directly to the CEO? That's a position that typically requires 15 to 20 years of experience. Ms. Rodriguez had less than 8 when she was hired. The optics alone are problematic, but more concerning is the precedent it sets. How can we expect our employees to believe in meritocracy when leadership positions appear to be awarded based on personal favoritism? She had charts, graphs, comparisons to industry standards. She mentioned the gala, how Christopher and I had arrived together, danced together, left together. She didn't explicitly accuse us of an affair, but she didn't have to. The implication hung in the air like poison. Marcus sat beside her, looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. Coward. He'd always been good at letting other people do his dirty work. When Amanda finished, the board chair, a stern woman named Patricia Holloway, turned to Christopher. Do you have a response to these allegations? I do, Christopher said, his voice calm but hard as steel. Amanda is correct that Elena had less experience than some candidates when I hired her. What she fails to mention is that experience and innovation are not always correlated. I hired Elena because she showed a vision and strategic thinking that none of the other candidates, including several with decades of experience, could match. Her work has proven that decision correct. He pulled up his own presentation showing the revenue increases since my campaigns launched, the industry recognition we'd received, the market share we'd captured from competitors. The numbers were irrefutable. As for our personal relationship, he continued, meeting each board member's eyes in turn, Elena and I have maintained completely professional boundaries. We've had working dinners, yes, as I do with all my direct reports. We attended the gala together because it's customary for department heads reporting to the CEO to arrive with their supervisor. There has been no impropriety, no favoritism beyond recognizing and rewarding exceptional work. Then you deny any romantic feelings toward Ms. Rodriguez? Patricia asked bluntly. Christopher paused. I held my breath. He could lie. Should lie. It would be the smart, safe political answer. I won't insult this board's intelligence by pretending I don't find Elena remarkable, he said carefully. She's brilliant, creative, and has more integrity than anyone I've worked with in 20 years of building this company. Do I admire her? Absolutely. But I've never allowed those feelings to compromise my judgment or her position. She earned everything she has through merit, and her results prove it. Patricia turned to me. Ms. Rodriguez, do you have anything to add? This was my moment. I could play it safe, defend myself and Christopher, and hope the board sided with us. Or I could go on the offensive. I chose to fight. I'd like to address Ms. Chen's concerns, I said, standing and connecting my laptop to the conference room display, because I think there's a larger conversation we need to have about leadership, accountability, and the real reasons behind these allegations. Amanda's eyes narrowed. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I pulled up my presentation. These are my performance metrics since joining Thornton Industries. As you can see, revenue in my department has increased by 63%. Market penetration in key demographics has improved by 48%. Brand recognition has doubled. Our latest campaign generated over 100 million organic impressions and was featured in Forbes, Ad Age, and the Wall Street Journal as an example of innovative marketing. I let that sink in, then continued. I didn't achieve these results through favoritism. I achieved them by working 12-hour days, by building and leading a talented team, by taking calculated risks that paid off. Yes, I had less traditional experience than some candidates. I also had fresh perspectives that challenged the status quo. Isn't that what innovation requires? Several board members nodded. I pressed forward. Now, let's talk about the real issue here. Ms. Chen isn't concerned about impropriety or company culture. She's concerned about competition, about another woman in leadership who doesn't answer to her, who has direct access to the CEO, who's getting recognition for her work. That's absurd, Amanda interjected. Is it? I pulled up the next slide. This is a record of employee complaints filed against Ms. Chen over the past 5 years. Sexual harassment allegations, hostile work environment claims, accusations of taking credit for subordinates' work, complaints that were mysteriously dismissed or buried. Amanda's face went white. Marcus looked shocked. Clearly, he hadn't known about this. Where did you get that? Amanda demanded. Those are confidential personnel records. Actually, they're not, I said calmly. These are copies that were given to me by former employees who felt their complaints weren't taken seriously, including your ex-husband, who was willing to go on record about the toxic culture you created. I displayed testimonials from 3 former employees, all describing the same pattern. Amanda identifying talented subordinates as threats and systematically destroying their credibility until they quit or were forced out. The woman who had my position before me, she didn't leave for a better opportunity. She left because Ms. Chen made her life unbearable, questioning every decision, undermining her authority, spreading rumors about her competence. Sound familiar? Patricia leaned forward, her expression grave. Amanda, did you have any knowledge of these complaints? They were baseless accusations from disgruntled employees, Amanda said, but her voice had lost its confidence. People who couldn't handle the standards I set. Standards? I pulled up another slide. Let's talk about standards. This is an analysis of campaign performance in your operations department over the past 3 years. Revenue increases of 15%, respectable, certainly. Now look at the campaigns your team actually developed versus the ones you personally took credit for. The data was damning. Amanda had been systematically claiming ownership of her team's best work while distancing herself from anything that underperformed. "You're a talented executive, Ms. Chen," I said, "but you're also someone who sees other women not as allies but as threats. Someone who can't handle the idea of sharing the spotlight. That's why you went after me. Not because of any impropriety with Christopher, but because my success doesn't flow through you and you can't stand it." The room was silent. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Christopher's expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the approval in his eyes. Patricia conferred quietly with the other board members, then addressed the room. "We'll need time to review all of this information. In the meantime, Ms. Rodriguez, you're to continue in your current position. Christopher, you've provided adequate documentation to support your hiring decision. As for you, Amanda, we'll be conducting a formal investigation into these allegations. Until that's complete, you'll be placed on administrative leave." "What?" Amanda stood abruptly. "You can't be serious. I've given 15 years to this company, and we appreciate your service," Patricia said firmly. "But these are serious allegations that require serious investigation. The decision is final." Amanda looked at Marcus, clearly expecting him to defend her, to stand up and fight on her behalf. But Marcus, true to form, just sat there silently, already calculating how to distance himself from her fall from grace. "Fine," Amanda said coldly. She gathered her materials and walked out, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. The board members filed out, leaving Christopher, Marcus, and me alone in the conference room. The silence was deafening. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Elena, I didn't know about any of that. The complaints, the pattern of behavior. Didn't you?" I turned to face him. "Or did you just not want to know? How many people did you see her tear down, Marcus? How many times did you watch her take credit for someone else's work? You were her protege, her right hand. You saw everything." He had no answer, because we both knew the truth. He'd seen it all and chosen to ignore it, just like he'd chosen to ignore anything that didn't serve his ambition. "You traded me for a promotion," I continued, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling beneath. "You convinced yourself that Amanda was offering you something valuable, that her approval was worth more than 5 years of love and partnership. How's that working out for you?" "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "The biggest mistake of my life. I've been wanting to tell you that for months. I was wrong, Elena, about everything, about what I needed, about what mattered, about you. I let ambition blind me to what I was giving up. And now Amanda's gone, and you're realizing you've tied your entire career to a sinking ship," I said. It wasn't a question. He flinched but didn't deny it. "I deserve that. I deserve all of it. But I want you to know, I never stopped loving you." Christopher, who'd been silent until now, finally spitefully spoke. "I think you should leave, Marcus." Marcus looked between us, seeing something in the way we stood together, the way Christopher's hand hovered protectively near my back without quite touching. Understanding dawned on his face, followed by something that looked like grief. "Yeah," he said softly. "I should." He left, and I sagged slightly, the adrenaline of the confrontation finally fading. Christopher moved closer, his hand now definitely on my back, solid and steadying. "That was extraordinary," he said. "Terrifying and brilliant and completely extraordinary. You eviscerated her. She came at me, at us. I wasn't going to just roll over." "No," he agreed, Emma. "You never do. That's one of the things I love about you." The word hung in the air between us. Love. Not admire, not respect. Love. "Christopher," I started. "I know, Assis," he said. "I know this is complicated and we need to be careful about optics and there are professional considerations. But I also know that I'm falling in love with you, Elena. I've been falling for months now and I'm tired of pretending otherwise." My heart was racing. "The board cleared you of any impropriety. Your position was earned through merit, and everyone in that room knows it. If we choose to pursue a personal relationship now, it's our business, not theirs." Unless you don't feel the same way, in which case I'll never mention it again, and we'll go back to being purely professional. I looked at him, really looked at him. At this man who'd given me a chance when I was broken, who'd believed in me when I barely believed in myself, who'd stood by me when it would have been easier to distance himself from the controversy, who challenged me, respected me, saw me as an equal. I feel the same way, I admitted. I've been trying not to because it seemed complicated and risky, and he kissed me. Right there in the conference room with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and my presentation still glowing on the screen. It was nothing like kissing Marcus had been. This was urgent and tender and felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless and smiling. "That was extremely unprofessional," I said. "Sue me." We laughed, and it felt like something had fundamentally shifted in the universe, like all the pain and betrayal of the past 6 months had been leading to this moment, this person, this perfect rightness. The investigation into Amanda took 3 weeks. In that time, more people came forward, employees past and present, all telling the same story of manipulation, credit theft, and systematic destruction of anyone she perceived as a threat. The board had no choice but to terminate her employment, though they offered a generous severance package to avoid a potential lawsuit. She didn't go quietly. There were press releases claiming she was being forced out due to gender discrimination, interviews where she positioned herself as a victim of corporate politics. But the evidence was too damning, and most people in the industry knew her reputation. The narrative didn't stick. Marcus stayed on for a few more weeks before accepting a position at a smaller company, a significant step down from VP at Thornton Industries, but probably the best he could do given his association with Amanda. We never spoke again after that day in the conference room. There was nothing left to say. Christopher and I were careful about our relationship, at least at first. We kept things professional at the office, never showing favoritism, never giving anyone ammunition to claim impropriety. But we also stopped hiding that we were together. We attended industry events as a couple, had dinner together openly, and let people draw their own conclusions. The gossip died down quickly. My work continued to speak for itself, and Christopher made sure everyone knew that my position was secure based on merit, not personal relationships. We developed a rhythm, colleagues during work hours, partners afterwards, seamlessly shifting between the two. 6 months after the board meeting, Christopher reorganized the executive structure. With Amanda gone, he needed a new COO. Several people expected him to recruit from outside, to bring in someone with decades of experience and an impressive pedigree. Instead, he promoted me. "You've proven yourself 10 times over," he said when he offered me the position. "You've delivered exceptional results, demonstrated leadership under pressure, and shown integrity that's rare at this level. You're the right person for this job, Elena, if you want it." "What about my age? My experience?" "All the things Amanda said were bullshit," he interrupted. "Age and experience don't automatically confer wisdom or competence. You have vision, strategy, and the ability to inspire people to do their best work. That's what matters. So what do you say? Want to be my COO?" I said yes. Obviously, I said yes. Which brings me back to that conference room, 6 months later, watching Marcus's face go white as I walked in as his new boss. The meeting was about restructuring the marketing department, integrating the strategic and operational sides that had been siloed under Amanda's territorial leadership. Marcus was there as VP of Global Marketing, along with the other department heads. I took my seat at the head of the table, Christopher beside me, and looked around at the assembled executives. Some faces were excited, others nervous. Marcus looked actively ill. "Good morning, everyone," I said again, my voice clear and confident. "As I mentioned, I'm Elena Thornton. Using my married name still gave me a thrill, and I'm excited to be working with all of you to transform how our departments collaborate." Yes, married. Christopher had proposed 3 months earlier on a quiet Sunday morning in our apartment, with no fanfare or elaborate setup. Just him, me, coffee, and a simple question. Marry me? We'd gotten married 2 weeks later at City Hall with just our closest friends and my family present. No massive wedding, no months of planning, no stress. Just a commitment between two people who knew what they wanted and weren't interested in performing for anyone else. Marcus hadn't been invited, obviously. Now, in this conference room, I laid out my vision for the restructured departments. More collaboration, less territoriality, shared goals, and shared accountability. Most people were nodding along, asking good questions, clearly excited about the changes. Marcus said nothing. He just stared at me like I was a ghost, like he couldn't quite believe this was real. When the meeting ended and people filed out, he lingered. Christopher noticed, squeezed my hand briefly under the table, and stepped outside, giving us privacy but staying close enough if I needed him. Elena, Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly, I need to say something. You have 3 minutes, I said, checking my watch. I have another meeting. I was wrong about everything. About you, about what I wanted, about what mattered. Amanda destroyed my career just like you said she would. I'm barely hanging on here, and the only reason Christopher hasn't fired me is probably because of you. Christopher doesn't fire people without cause, I corrected. If you're still here, it's because you're good at your job. I don't have anything to do with it. I've been watching you, he continued. Watching you succeed. Watching you become everything I told you that you couldn't be. Watching you with him. Seeing you happy in a way you never were with me. And I realized I destroyed the best thing in my life for an illusion. For a woman who didn't care about me and a promotion that meant nothing. Yes, I said simply, you did. Is there any chance, guys? He started. No. You didn't let me finish. I don't need to. The answer is no. No, we can't be friends. No, there's no chance of us getting back together. No, I don't forgive you, and I don't need to for my own closure. You made choices, Marcus. You chose ambition over love, status over substance, Amanda over me. Those were your decisions, and you get to live with the consequences. But I love you, he said desperately. I never stopped loving you. That's your problem, not mine. I stood, gathering my materials. I need to be clear about something, Marcus. You will treat me with the same professional respect you'd give any COO. We will interact as colleagues when necessary, and that's all we'll ever be. If you can't handle that, there are other companies hiring VPs of global marketing. But I'm not going anywhere. And neither is Christopher. So you need to decide if you can work under these conditions. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant he realized it was really over, that there was no grand gesture he could make that would undo what he'd done. I can work under these conditions, he said quietly. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you're happy. You deserve it. I just wish I'd been smart enough to realize that before I lost you. So do I said. It would have saved us both a lot of pain. I walked out of the conference room and found Christopher waiting in the hall, leaning against the wall with his phone in his hand, but his attention fully on the door. Okay, he asked. More than okay, I said, linking my arm through his. Let's go home. 18 months after Marcus broke my heart over tiramisu, I stood in a very different restaurant, a Michelin-starred establishment in downtown LA, celebrating the launch of our most successful quarter in company history. Christopher's hand rested on my knee under the table as we toasted with champagne that cost more than my first car. To the best COO in the business, he said, his eyes warm with pride and love. To the man who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, I countered. We drank, and I looked around at my team, the talented people I'd assembled and empowered who'd followed me from strategic marketing into operations and beyond. People who were loyal not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Saw the earnings report on the news. So proud of you, mija. Your father would be over the moon. Tears pricked my eyes. My father had died believing I was playing it safe, settling for okay when I could be extraordinary. I wished he could see me now. Hey, Christopher said softly, noticing. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's the weird part. I laughed a little. A year and a half ago, I thought my life was over. I thought Marcus leaving me meant I'd failed somehow, that I wasn't enough. And now? Now I realize he did me the biggest favor of my life. He showed me what I didn't want, a relationship based on me making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. He showed me that I was capable of so much more than I'd been allowing myself to achieve. In trying to destroy me, he actually freed me. Christopher raised his glass again. Then here's to Marcus Hayes, the idiot who let you go and changed both our lives. I laughed and clinked my glass against his. To Marcus, may he someday find what he's looking for as long as he looks for it far away from us. I still see Marcus occasionally in meetings and company events. He's competent at his job. I have to give him that. But he's never going to rise higher at Thornton Industries. The bloom is off the rose, and everyone knows he hitched his wagon to Amanda's falling star. He's dating someone new, a woman from the finance department. I hope he treats her better than he treated me. I genuinely do. Carrying anger toward him would be like carrying poison, and I have better things to do with my energy. Amanda disappeared from the industry for a while, then resurfaced at a startup that folded within 6 months. Last I heard, she was consulting, trading on her Thornton Industries credentials while carefully omitting why she left. The people who matter know the truth, and that's enough. As for me and Christopher, we're building something real. We challenge each other, support each other, push each other to be better without demanding that we be less. We work together, dream together, and when we disagree, which we do often, we fight fair and find solutions. I'm not going to pretend it's perfect. We're both intense, driven people, and sometimes our work life bleeds into our personal life in ways that aren't healthy. But we're learning, growing, figuring out how to balance ambition with connection, success with happiness. Last month, Christopher made a suggestion that surprised me. What if we took a real vacation? 2 weeks, no phones, no laptops, no business talk, just us, somewhere beautiful, being completely useless together. You want to be useless? I teased. That doesn't sound like the Christopher Thornton I know. The Christopher Thornton you know is learning that there's more to life than quarterly earnings reports, he said. His incredibly wise and beautiful wife taught him that. So we're going to Bali next month. 2 weeks of beaches, temples, and intentional disconnection from the empire we've built. It terrifies me, the idea of unplugging so completely. It also excites me, the idea of just being Elena and Christopher, not COO and CEO. I think about the woman I was 18 months ago, heartbroken, questioning everything, feeling like her life had imploded. I wish I could go back and tell her that the implosion was actually a demolition, clearing ground for something stronger, better, more authentic. I wish I could tell her that the man who broke her heart would become irrelevant, that his betrayal would become the catalyst for her transformation rather than her destruction. I wish I could tell her that she was already enough, that she'd always been enough, and that she just needed the right circumstances to prove it to herself. But I couldn't go back. I could only move forward, and forward was exactly where I wanted to be. The annual Thornton Industries Gala rolled around again. My second as COO, my first as Christopher's wife. I wore emerald green this time, a color that made me feel powerful and alive. Christopher looked devastating in his tuxedo, and when we walked into the Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom, I felt none of the nervousness I'd felt the year before. This was my event, my company, my life. We circulated through the crowd, greeting board members and investors, celebrating our record-breaking year. Several people mentioned the Harvard Business Review article that had featured me as one of the top young executives to watch. Not bad for someone with less than 10 years of experience, I'd joked when it came out. I saw Marcus across the room with his girlfriend. He caught my eye and gave me a small nod, not friendly exactly, but respectful, acknowledging that we existed in the same space but no longer in the same orbit. Later, as the evening wound down and the crowd thinned, Christopher pulled me onto the dance floor. The same song was playing as had played the year before. I recognized the melody. "Remember this?" he asked. "The song from last year's gala, when you told me you were falling in love with me." "When I told you I wasn't married to my work anymore," he corrected, pulling me closer, "because I'd found something, someone worth coming home to." "And have I lived up to expectations?" I asked playfully. "You've exceeded every expectation I've ever had," he said seriously. "Every day with you is better than the one before. Every challenge we face together makes us stronger." Every success is sweeter because I get to share it with you. That's quite a testimonial, Mr. Thornton. I'm a man who believes in data, Mrs. Thornton, and the data is clear. You're the best decision I've ever made. We swayed together, and I rested my head against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart against my cheek. Around us, the ballroom glittered with possibility, with deals being made, relationships forming, futures being shaped. But in that moment, I wasn't the COO of a billion-dollar company. I wasn't Marcus's ex-fiancé who'd risen from the ashes of betrayal. I wasn't the woman who'd proven all her doubters wrong. I was just Elena, dancing with the man I loved, grateful for every twist and turn that had led me here. Marcus had betrayed me for a promotion. He'd thought he was trading up, choosing ambition over a woman who would hold him back. Instead, he'd freed me to become everything I was meant to be. He'd freed me to find a partnership built on mutual respect rather than one person's sacrifice. He'd freed me to discover that I didn't need someone to complete me. I needed someone to complement me, to stand beside me as an equal, to celebrate my success rather than feel threatened by it. I'd married his boss and become his superior, yes. But more importantly, I'd become my own superior, the best version of myself, unburdened by anyone else's limiting expectations. The music swelled, and Christopher spun me in a circle, laughing as my dress flared out around me. When I came back to him, his eyes were full of love and pride and joy. "Happy?" he asked. I looked around the ballroom at my team celebrating, at the board members who'd initially doubted me now treating me with respect, at Marcus standing on the sidelines watching his ex-fiancée dance with the CEO he'd once tried to impress. I thought about the life I'd built, the empire I was helping to run, the future Christopher and I were creating together. Deliriously, I said. And I was. God help me, I really was. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever could have happened. Sometimes betrayal is actually liberation. Sometimes losing everything creates space for something better than you ever imagined. Marcus had broken my heart, but in doing so, he'd freed me to build something better. Not just a career, but a life. Not just success, but happiness. Not just a promotion, but a partnership. He'd thought he was trading up when he chose Amanda and ambition over me. He'd been wrong, and his loss had been my greatest gain. The song ended, but Christopher and I kept dancing, lost in our own world, building our own future, one perfect moment at a time. Epilogue, 5 years later. The Thornton Industries headquarters had expanded, occupying 3 interconnected towers in downtown LA. Christopher and I had built something extraordinary. A company that valued innovation, integrity, and people over pure profit. Our revenue had tripled, but more importantly, we'd created a culture where talent was recognized regardless of politics, where hard work was rewarded, and where toxic leadership was rooted out before it could metastasize. I stood in my office on the 51st floor, 1 floor above Christopher's now, in a move that made us both laugh, looking out at the city sprawling beneath me. At 35, I was one of the youngest COOs of a Fortune 500 company, and I'd gotten there through merit, strategy, and refusing to accept anyone's limitations on my potential. My phone buzzed with a message from Christopher. Board meeting in 10, ready to blow their minds? I smiled. We were about to present our expansion plan into sustainable technology, a risky pivot that some board members would resist, but that we believed was the company's future. We'd spent months building the case, gathering data, preparing for every objection. Born ready, I texted back. As I gathered my materials, I thought about the woman I'd been 7 years ago, the one who'd been dumped over tiramisu, who'd thought her life was ending, who'd believed she wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't enough, period. That woman would barely recognize me now, and that was exactly as it should be. My assistant knocked on the door. "Mrs. Thornton, your 3 o'clock is here?" I checked my schedule. 3 o'clock was an informational interview with a junior marketing analyst who'd reached out through LinkedIn asking for career advice. I made a point of doing these regularly, paying forward the opportunities I'd been given, helping other women navigate the corporate world's hidden obstacles. "Send her in," I said. A young woman entered, nervous but trying to hide it, dressed in a suit that was slightly too formal for a casual coffee meeting. She reminded me of myself at her age, ambitious but uncertain, hungry but unsure she was allowed to be hungry. Ms. Rodriguez, I mean, Mrs. Thornton, she started. Elena is fine, I said warmly. And you're Sophie, right? Tell me about yourself. We talked for 45 minutes. She told me about her dreams of building innovative campaigns, her fear that she wasn't progressing fast enough, her recent breakup with a boyfriend who'd told her she needed to tone down her ambition if she wanted to get married. I saw so much of my younger self in her that it hurt. Can I tell you something? I said when she finished. The right partner will never ask you to be less than you are. They'll challenge you to be more, to reach higher, to become the best version of yourself. Anyone who needs you to be smaller so they can feel bigger isn't worth your time. But what if I'm too much? She asked quietly. Too ambitious, too driven, too focused on career. Then you're too much for the wrong people, I said firmly. And exactly right for the right ones. Don't ever apologize for wanting more, for working hard, for having big dreams. The world will try to make you feel like ambition in a woman is somehow unseemly or unfeminine or selfish. Don't believe it. Your ambition is your power. Own it. She left looking lighter somehow, more hopeful. I hoped I'd given her something useful. Permission to be herself, to want what she wanted without shame or apology. My phone buzzed again. Christopher, running late, start without me? Never, I replied. We present together or not at all, because that was our strength. We were better together than we ever could be apart. Partners in every sense of the word, building something that neither of us could have created alone. I thought about Marcus sometimes, though less and less as the years passed. He'd left Thornton Industries eventually, taking a lateral position at a competitor. I'd heard through the grapevine that he'd gotten married last year, not to the woman from finance, but to someone else entirely. I hoped he was happy. I genuinely did. Not because I cared about him specifically anymore, but because holding on to anger or bitterness would only poison my own life. He'd been a catalyst, nothing more. A painful but necessary chapter in my story, teaching me what I didn't want so I could recognize what I did want when it appeared. Christopher arrived at my office looking slightly disheveled but energized. Sorry, got caught up in a call with the Tokyo office, ready to change the world? Always. We walked to the boardroom together, side by side, equal partners in every way. As we presented our vision for Thornton Industries' future, I felt that familiar thrill, the joy of building something meaningful, of pushing boundaries, of proving that sustainable business wasn't just ethical but profitable. Several board members asked tough questions. We answered them all, our preparation evident, our passion undeniable. When we finished, Patricia Holloway, still board chair after all these years, leaned back in her chair and smiled. When you two first got together, some people questioned whether it would create complications, she said. I think we can all agree now that it's been the best thing to happen to this company. You challenge each other, complement each other, and bring out the best in each other. The numbers speak for themselves, but so does the culture you've built. I move to approve the expansion plan. The vote was unanimous. Afterward, Christopher and I stood on the balcony of his office. Our office is connected by a shared terrace, a perk we'd insisted on when the building was designed, looking out at the sunset, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. We did it, I said. You doubted we would? Not for a second. He pulled me close and I leaned into him, grateful for this life we'd built, this partnership we'd forged, this future we were creating. I love you, he said, for exactly who you are, not who I need you to be. I love you too, I replied, for seeing me, believing in me, and standing beside me as an equal. Always, he promised. And I believed him. Because unlike Marcus, who'd promised forever and delivered betrayal, Christopher had proven his words with actions every single day since I'd met him. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. Saw the announcement about the expansion. Congratulations. You've built something amazing. M. Marcus. After all these years, still watching from the sidelines. I showed Christopher the message. Should I respond? Do you want to? I thought about it for a moment, then typed, Thank you. Best wishes to you. Brief, polite, final. acknowledging his message without inviting further conversation. I hit send and then blocked the number. Not out of anger, but out of completion. That chapter was closed, and I had no desire to keep it even slightly ajar. Done? Christopher asked. Done, I confirmed. We stood there as the sun set, as the city lights began to twinkle below us, as the day gave way to evening. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new battles to fight, and victories to celebrate. But tonight, we just stood together, two people who'd found each other through pain and betrayal, and emerged stronger for it. Marcus had betrayed me for a promotion 7 years ago. He'd thought he was making a strategic career move, trading a comfortable relationship for corporate advancement. He'd been spectacularly, catastrophically wrong. I'd married his boss, become his superior, and built an empire that dwarfed anything he'd ever achieve. But more than that, I'd built a life I loved with a partner who valued me, surrounded by work that mattered. His betrayal had been the best gift he ever gave me. It had destroyed the safe, comfortable life I'd been building and forced me to become the woman I was always meant to be: fierce, ambitious, unapologetic, and powerful. And the sweetest revenge? I barely thought about him anymore. He'd become irrelevant, a footnote in my origin story, the villain whose betrayal had inadvertently set the hero free. "What are you thinking about?" Christopher asked, noticing my contemplative expression. "How grateful I am," I said honestly, "for all of it. The heartbreak, the struggle, the uncertainty. Because it led me here to this moment, to you, to this life." "Grateful for heartbreak?" He raised an eyebrow. "Grateful that I was broken open enough to rebuild myself stronger. Grateful that I was forced to confront my own potential instead of hiding behind someone else's mediocrity. Grateful that Marcus showed me exactly who he was before I wasted my entire life on him." Christopher kissed my temple. "His loss, my gain." "Our gain," I corrected. "I gained too. I gained myself." We went home that night, to the penthouse we'd bought together, decorated together, filled with memories we'd made together. It was nothing like the cramped apartment I'd shared with Marcus, where I'd made myself small and tried to be convenient. This was a space that reflected both of us, our shared taste and individual personalities coexisting harmoniously. Over dinner, takeout from our favorite Thai place because we were too tired to cook, Christopher brought up something we'd been dancing around for months. "I've been thinking," he said carefully, "about what comes next. The Tokyo expansion, the sustainability initiative, the new product line. About us, about family." My heart skipped. We'd talked about children before in abstract terms, but we'd both been so focused on building the company that we'd kept pushing the conversation to someday. "You want to have a baby?" I asked. "I want to have our baby," he clarified. "I want to see what we create together beyond boardrooms and business plans, but only if you want it too. I know your career is important." "It is important," I interrupted. "But so is this. So are you. So is building a complete life, not just a successful career." I'd learned that lesson the hard way. I'd learned that Marcus's mistake wasn't choosing career over love. It was believing those things had to be in opposition. Christopher and I had proven you could have both, that success in one area didn't require sacrifice in another if you had the right partner. "So is that a yes?" Christopher asked, hope lighting his eyes. "That's a yes," I said, moving around the table to sit in his lap. "Let's make something beautiful together. Something that has nothing to do with profit margins or market share. A tiny human who'll probably inherit your brilliance and my stubbornness?" "A terrifying combination," I agreed, laughing. "Our competitors won't stand a chance in 30 years. We made love that night with a new sense of purpose, of creating something beyond ourselves. And 6 weeks later, when the test showed 2 pink lines, we sat on the bathroom floor together and cried happy tears, already imagining the future we were building. I was 4 months pregnant when Marcus's wedding announcement appeared in my LinkedIn feed. I almost scrolled past it. I'd unfollowed him years ago, but mutual connections had shared it and the algorithm deemed it relevant. Marcus Hayes is getting married to Jennifer Chen, Senior VP at DataCorp Solutions. Celebration to follow. Chen. Of course he'd found another Chen. Some people never learned. I showed it to Christopher over breakfast. Marcus is getting married. Good for him, Christopher said, not looking up from the Wall Street Journal. Hope he's learned to treat this one better. Amanda's cousin, apparently. I'd done a quick LinkedIn search. Also in tech, also more senior than him, also probably grooming him as her protege. So he's learned nothing, Christopher concluded. Still searching for validation through attachment to powerful women instead of building his own power. It was a devastatingly accurate assessment. Marcus had spent his entire career trying to ride in someone else's slipstream, mine, Amanda's, now Jennifer's. He'd never figured out how to be the driver of his own success. I felt something then, looking at his happy engagement photo. Not jealousy, God no, not anger or bitterness or regret, just a profound sense of dodging a bullet. If Marcus hadn't left me, I'd probably be married to him now, maybe pregnant with his child, still making myself smaller to accommodate his fragile ego, still sublimating my own ambitions to support his. I'd be a shadow of who I was now. Comfortable, maybe, safe, but not alive, not fully myself, not happy in the bone-deep way I was now. You okay? Christopher asked, finally looking up and noticing my expression. Better than okay, I said, placing his hand on my barely showing belly where our daughter was growing. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. 2 years later, Isabella Thornton was born on a sunny Tuesday in September, arriving 3 weeks early and already demonstrating the stubbornness Christopher had predicted. She had my eyes and his nose and a set of lungs that suggested she'd have no trouble making her voice heard in any boardroom someday. I took 3 months of maternity leave, actual leave, where I didn't check email obsessively or take calls during feeding times. Christopher took paternity leave too, and we spent those early months in a haze of sleepless wonder, learning how to be parents while still being ourselves. The company didn't fall apart without us. We'd built strong teams, distributed leadership, and created systems that functioned independently of any single person. It was proof that good leadership wasn't about being indispensable. It was about making yourself dispensable by elevating others. When I returned to work, we did it together, co-parenting as deliberately as we'd co-led the company. Christopher took Isabella to her pediatrician appointments. I handled daycare drop-off. We split sick days and school events and the millions of tiny decisions that make up a life. Neither of us was the primary parent because we were both primary parents, just like we were both primary leaders. It wasn't always easy. There were days when I felt guilty for missing bedtime, or when Christopher beat himself up for being distracted during playtime because he was thinking about a board presentation. But we gave each other grace, supported each other through the challenges, and remembered that we were building something sustainable, a family and a business that could both thrive. One evening when Isabella was 18 months old, Christopher found me in our home office, looking at an old photo on my computer. It was from 7 years earlier, me and Marcus at a company holiday party, both of us smiling, him with his arm around my waist. Why are you looking at that? Christopher asked, not accusatory, just curious. Trying to remember who that woman was, I admitted. She looks so young, so naive, so willing to make herself small. She also looks unhappy, Christopher observed, studying the photo. Look at her eyes. She's smiling, but her eyes are sad. He was right. I'd been sad even then, even before the breakup. Sad because I was losing myself trying to be what Marcus needed. Sad because I knew deep down that I was capable of more but was too afraid to reach for it. I don't miss her, I said. That version of me. I'm glad she got her heart broken. I'm glad she had to rebuild. I'm glad too, Christopher said, because the woman who rebuilt herself is extraordinary. She's my wife, my partner, my co-CEO, and the mother of my child. She's everything I didn't know I needed. Co-CEO? I repeated. That's new, he grinned. Board approved it today. Surprise? I was going to tell you over dinner, but you're looking at ancient history, so I'm telling you now. Effective next quarter, we're both CEOs. Equal authority, equal responsibility, equal pay. I stared at him. Christopher, you built this company. It's your baby. No, we built this company, he corrected. The expansion, the culture change, the sustainable pivot, that was us, together. I've been hoarding a title that doesn't reflect reality anymore. You're not my COO, Elena. You're my equal. The board agrees, the numbers prove it, and it's time our titles reflected the truth. I kissed him then, hard and grateful and overwhelmed, with love for this man who saw me, truly saw me, and celebrated my success instead of feeling threatened by it. Thank you, I whispered against his lips. Thank you, he countered, for being brave enough to rebuild after Marcus broke you, for taking a chance on a workaholic CEO with control issues, for building this life with me. From the nursery, Isabella started crying, her "I'm awake and lonely and need my parents right now" cry. We went to her together, Christopher scooping her up while I grabbed her favorite book. As we read to our daughter, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger, Christopher's arm warm around my shoulders, I thought about the trajectory of my life. How one man's betrayal had led to another man's love. How losing everything had created space for something better than I'd ever imagined. If I could go back to that restaurant 7 years ago, to the moment Marcus took off his ring and walked away, what would I tell that heartbroken woman? I'd tell her, this is going to hurt. It's going to hurt worse than anything you've experienced. You're going to cry yourself to sleep for weeks. You're going to question everything about yourself, but then you're going to get angry, and that anger is going to forge you into something stronger, sharper, more powerful than you ever thought possible. You're going to build an empire. You're going to find a partner who celebrates your success instead of feeling diminished by it. You're going to have a daughter who'll grow up watching her mother lead with strength and compassion, who'll never question whether she's allowed to be ambitious. You're going to become everything Marcus told you that you weren't, and you're going to do it at the company where he works, in the office above his, with his former boss as your husband and equal partner. And the best part, you're going to be happy, not just successful, but happy. Not just powerful, but fulfilled. Not just respected, but loved for exactly who you are. So thank Marcus when he breaks your heart. Thank him for showing you who he really was before you wasted your entire life on him. Thank him for being too small to appreciate what he had. And then forget about him because he's irrelevant to the incredible life you're about to build. Isabella fell asleep in Christopher's arms, her face peaceful, her breathing steady. We carried her back to her crib together, tucking her in with practiced efficiency. I love our life, I whispered, watching our daughter sleep. So do I, Christopher agreed, every chaotic, beautiful, unpredictable moment of it. We left the nursery and headed to our bedroom, ready to collapse after another long day of juggling parenthood and corporate leadership. But before we turned off the lights, Christopher pulled me close. I need you to know something, he said seriously. You didn't just become successful despite Marcus leaving you. You became successful because you're brilliant, driven, and capable. He was a catalyst, maybe, but you were always the bomb. You just needed the right conditions to explode. That's surprisingly violent imagery, I teased. You know what I mean. Your success isn't about revenge or proving Marcus wrong. It's about you finally giving yourself permission to be who you always were. He was right. My success wasn't about Marcus at all, not really. It was about me, about finding my own power, building my own empire, becoming my own hero. Marcus had betrayed me for a promotion. He'd thought he was trading up, choosing ambition over love, advancement over partnership. Instead, he'd set me free to build something he could never touch, achieve heights he could never reach, and find happiness he would never understand. And I'd won. Not because I'd beaten him, that would suggest he was still relevant, still competition. I'd won because I'd built a life so fulfilling, so abundant, so completely and utterly mine, that his betrayal had become nothing more than a distant memory, barely worth mentioning. I'd married his boss, yes. I'd become his superior, absolutely. But more importantly, I'd become superior to the woman I'd been, the one who'd thought she needed a man's approval to be valuable, who'd made herself small to accommodate someone else's fragility, who'd believed that ambition in a woman was somehow shameful. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, fiercer, more authentic, someone who could lead a billion-dollar company and rock a baby to sleep with equal skill. Someone who didn't have to choose between career and family, power and love, success and happiness. Someone who had it all, not because she'd married well, though she had, but because she'd finally, fully, completely become herself. As I drifted off to sleep in Christopher's arms, our daughter dreaming in the next room, our company thriving under our joint leadership, I felt something I'd never felt with Marcus. Complete, absolute, bone-deep peace. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with exactly who I was supposed to be with, living exactly the life I was meant to live. And Marcus? Well, Marcus was wherever he was. Probably still searching for validation through someone else's success, still trying to climb ladders by holding on to other people instead of building his own. I hoped he found happiness eventually. I really did. But his happiness or lack thereof had nothing to do with mine anymore. I'd moved on, I'd moved up, I'd moved into a life so extraordinary that his betrayal had become the best thing that ever happened to me. And that, in the end, was the sweetest revenge of all. Not caring about revenge at all, because I'd won something far better myself.